Make the choice to begin anywhere in your life, and the journey has started. And along the way, be inspired. Listen to the stories by joining the president of Howard University, Dr. Wayne A.I. Frederick, on The Journey.
He's a former lieutenant governor of Maryland and former chairman of the Republican National Committee. Currently, he hosts his own podcast and is a highly sought-after political commentator. Hello, my name is Dr. Wayne Frederick, and my guest today, veteran politician and political expert Michael Steele, joins me for an insightful conversation about his life experiences and career journey. Michael, welcome to The Journey.
Dr. Frederick, it's a real pleasure to take this journey with you, man. It's an honor. Thank you.
Absolutely. So let's start at the very beginning. I came to Washington, D.C. In 1988 to attend Howard University. And one of the things that I still love about Washington, D.C. is meeting people who are truly from D.C. Yeah. Not transplanted here, not came here by some other journey like I did, but people from here, they have a uniqueness. So tell me what it was like growing up here in Washington, D.C. and where your journey actually started.
Oh, baby, that is, I love the way you opened the conversation. I'm a native Washingtonian and I grew up in Petworth, right up in Ward 4, right off of Grant Circle, about 2 blocks off of Grant Circle. Went to St. Gabriel's Catholic Church there in the area. Spent a lot of time at the Petworth Library. Don't know why. I just like to look at the books. but I spent... grew up in that Georgia Avenue corridor, went to Carroll High School about a mile or so right up the road from me. So my early concentration in the city was in that neighborhood. But then, of course, Washington is just so many unique neighborhoods and so many unique communities. So it was a real great pleasure to kind of get out there and sort of experience the world in miniature, because as you noted, a lot of folks are transplanted to DC, certainly if they're working on the Hill or in here for some lobbying firm or whatever. So it was really kind of exciting. It was what has been, I think, disappointing at some point, but certainly interesting to watch has been the transformation and the disintegration of the city in some respects. And that has been something for me as a native that, because my parents still live in our family home in Petworth, when I'm back in the neighborhood, you can see the changes and feel the changes in one sense, and that's good because change is good. But then you don't really get the sense that there is a level of connectedness as we once saw. And a lot of it, people bringing their politics in and all this other stuff, which largely they didn't do before. So it's a real different vibe now. But it was a real good experience growing up in the city and seeing the world right there in your backyard.
Now, in terms of your schooling, what was your schooling like at the schools that you mentioned? I also went to an all-boy Catholic high school. Right. Growing up. So I know what that was like for me, but maybe you can describe to my audience what that was like.
Yeah, like I said, I went to St. Gabriel's, and from St. Gabriel's, I then went up the street to Carroll, Archbishop Carroll, which was run by the Augustinians. And the Augustinians founded the school. Well, actually, they were brought in when Archbishop O'Boyle created the high school for boys, and from there I didn't go that far. I actually went up 295 to Baltimore to Johns Hopkins and did my undergraduate at Johns Hopkins as a pre-med major. Well, that didn't last long. I don't know what the hell I was thinking. I was going to be a doctor. That turned out to be my sister Monica, who became the doctor. But I did international relations as an undergrad after my 2-year experiment at wanting to be a surgeon, and then graduated from there and took a little detour, Mr. President. I wound up entering the Augustinian Seminary and studied for the priesthood for about 3 years, 2.5, 3 years at Villanova, and then up in Lawrence, Massachusetts, where I did my novitiate. And left right before I was to take my simple vows, is what they are called, but take vows at that time, and came back home to Washington, resettled in the neighborhood, and wound up going to Georgetown Law School and got my law degree there. And next thing I know, you're married, you got kids, and you get elected to office, and that's kind of how it's been running. But yeah, the academic portion for me was very much oriented here in the area, not traveling that far. And even when I consider my time at Villanova, Pennsylvania, well, it was basically a 2-hour drive, up 95. So it wasn't something that you had to get on a plane to get to.
Right. And obviously that part of your overall development, your faith, obviously has been integral and also informed your politics, not just your life as a whole, but also informed your politics. What about that period of time you use today in instructing how you go about your engagements?
Yeah, a lot of it. I tell you honestly, I could not have done the things that I've done the way I've done them without having that early orientation and anchoring around something that would ground me personally and philosophically, that would prepare me to take on some of the challenges that I've had to encounter. My attitude and my approach to my public service as an elected official, and even in my public service as a political official, as RNC chairman, was very much informed by my experience with the Augustinians. And I still try to carry that Augustinian charism with me. How I live out my Christianity and how I live out, even though I'm not living a vow of poverty, chastity, and obedience, except for when my wife wants me to, not spend money and be obedient. It's still very much a part of that narrative. So as I remember telling the staff at the RNC at one point, there was something particularly hot going on, and I was really fed up with crazy at that point and just lost my mind in the staff meeting. And as I was leaving the room after basically blessing everyone out, I turned back and look at him and go, "And you're lucky I spent time in a monastery, because this conversation would have been a lot worse." And they're sitting there going, "Holy crap. I think we just escaped," right? Yeah. But it really does inform. And certainly in my time as lieutenant governor, it had an impact on how I looked at public policy and how I thought I needed to not just do the political thing, but how I had to do the thing that was for the service of the people who had elected me. And that was paramount. And it still informs how I look at the world.
So let's start with, graduating from law school and what you embarked upon in between that and deciding to run for elected office.
Yeah, so the law school thing was fun. I did Georgetown at night, which meant that I had a day job, and I spent a lot of time. I was a paralegal in a prominent D.C. firm at the time, and really kind of, living life. I was recently married when I entered law school, and I'd been married probably about 2 years or so. So in 2 to 3 years. So still kind of that newlywed thing. So you got that going on. Then you've got law school, which is a whole other world by itself. And even more so when you're doing it at night, because you're working a full-time job. You're in class at 5:45 till about 10 or so. And then, you got to go home and do the work and then get up the next day and start it all over. So it was really a lesson in multi-levels of discipline. So the discipline of time and discipline of attention, because, your family takes a real hit when you're doing these things, and that's hard. And then, getting through that moved me into, and again, not really seeking out political office. while I was involved in all those things, I was chairman of the county political party here in Prince George's County. I was chairman of the Republican Party here as a county chairman. So I had all of those activities going on. So I had this sort of really weird kind of multifaceted existence that was happening. So the multitasking capabilities were very important, as you can imagine. But I managed to get through, but it was never set with the goal of, gee, I want to run for office. That was never really part of my plan. I was my goal was to be a practicing attorney. And when I graduated law school in 91, I set out, started at Cleary, Gottlieb, Steen and Hamilton, doing corporate finance, international finance on a large scale, and focused on doing the practice thing. But these other pieces of my life were also still taking shape and form. And so my political activity had sort of run a separate course and was speeding up. Now, it was interesting because growing up in D.C., a lot of my politics was oriented, as you can well imagine, D.C. being at least at that time, 10-1 Democratic, was oriented by Democratic politics. And even as a Republican, a registered Republican, I had the wonderful experience of learning from individuals like former Mayor Marion Barry, God bless him, John Ray, David Clark, God rest him, Joe Yeldell, who was a personal mentor for me, Charlene Jew Jarvis, who was my councilwoman, and I got to know her and work with her, not just politically, but in business through my work as a paralegal and as a lawyer. So I really got to see a lot of different sides of politics from the eyes of individuals who didn't come from my tribe, if you will, didn't come from my side of the political fence, which also shaped how I looked at public service as an elected official. If you want something done, I got to reach across the aisle to get it done, because even when you have the majorities, and this was true for the Democrats who ran the city, they still had to deal with Republicans in Congress, right? They still had to deal with, Councilwoman Schwartz, who was the Republican on the city council at the time. So it really kind of helped shape and form a lot of what would later become important features of my own public service, reaching across the aisle, the balance of faith, the sense of service, being a public servant, and what that really means, not just in the political sense, but in the gospel sense.
Yeah. And when you did decide to run for office, what was the first office you ran for?
Well, I didn't make the decision. One of the great ironies of my political life is that pretty much every office I've run for, I was asked to run for. Right. It was not, again, I'm not one of these things where they're like, I'm going to set the course and I want to be this, that, or the other. So 1998, our candidate for governor, who had just run in 94, Ellen Sauerbrey, lost to Paris Glendening for governor in 94. That was a very controversial campaign because there was some shenanigans going on at the ballot box. And that's well documented now, all these years later. But in 98, she wanted to run again. And she approached me to think about running on her ticket for comptroller of the state of Maryland. Again, I was a finance lawyer, had a quasi-finance background. I studied tax in law school, which actually I was one of those guys that actually liked tax class. It was just, Professor Ginsburg, the late husband of former Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, was my tax attorney, a tax professor. So, you learn it from some of the best. It was a lot of fun. But she approached me about running. So I said, okay, I'll run. Sure, why not? Yeah, comptroller, and I loved it. It was the first great campaign. The great story from that election was I never made it out of the primary. I lost in the primary. But here's the funny thing: former Governor Schaefer, who was running for comptroller for the first time, was running. It was clear going to be the Democratic nominee. And he and I forged a friendship during that primary. And whenever we would do these parades or we'd do these, these kind of events where all the candidates, we would always hang out together. It left such an impression on folks that to this day, people think that I was the Republican nominee that ran against the governor for comptroller, and I wasn't. I lost the primary. But we both had that kind of outsized personality, and it was something that people remembered. We developed a fast friendship that lasted right through my time when I was lieutenant governor and afterwards, up to his death. And it tells you a lot about how political actors of opposite points of view, parties, can still forge a public persona that the public will gravitate towards, and that can be an effective tool in opening up opportunities to get good things done. As luck would have it, I got to serve with the governor / comptroller when I was lieutenant governor, because he was comptroller. And our administration had forged a great relationship. Of course, Governor Ehrlich had a good relationship with Governor Schaefer, Comptroller Schaefer. So all of these things kind of came together. And so that was the first official run for me statewide, out of the box, out of the blue, asked to do it. The next time I was asked to run was for lieutenant governor when I was state party chairman. I was part of the vetting team for the governor. I'd vetted all these candidates, and at the last one, former Senator Bill Brock says to me, so what about you for lieutenant governor? I said, what do you mean, what about me? I'm sitting to be given, well, how about all these people here? And he's like, what about you? Got on the ticket. I was asked to do that. And then when I ran for the U.S. Senate, I got a phone call from the President of the United States asking me would I run for the U.S. Senate to fill the vacancy when Senator Sarbanes retired, who opened up the seat. And that was a hell of a run, too. So it's been one of these weird kind of things for me to be asked to serve that way.
Looking at your career, the RNC Chair chairmanship came about at a time very interesting for Republican politics in particular, and not too much different from the time we're living in with so much partisanship. What about that experience as RNC chair you think can inform the nation today as to how we move forward in such a divided country to bring us to the table to really discuss very, very important issues and to come up with solutions where no party has the monopoly on all of the answers?
Yeah, good question, tough question. Tough because, you're talking about a very different time, even though it was, 10 years ago? You're talking a very, very different place and time. Our politics has, you look at it this way, you mark change between period A and period B, which may be 50 years, and you go, wow, that's a lot of change. But then you look at the change between, 2010 and 2020, and it is like night and day. I mean, and so you're looking, the time frame is shorter as the change accelerates. It's amazing. Look, I inherited a party that was pushed back on his heels. We just lost to Barack Obama in a resounding defeat in 2008. We lost the House in 2006. I know the pressures and pains of that election in 2006 as a candidate for the U.S. Senate, where the Republican brand, just to put it bluntly, sucked. We were hemorrhaging voters. We were hemorrhaging support, donors. there was a malaise, to use that term from the 1970s, that had really infected the grassroots. They had begun to turn in on the party leadership, on the establishment. And of course, I get elected chairman, and I'm having this meeting. I say, "Oh, yeah, you want the black guy to run everything?"
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He got all this crap going on. Oh yeah, let's put him in charge. But we turned it around, and in 18 months, we were able to, I think, through um, a more direct conversation with the American people, talk about our ideas. Look, we battled over Obamacare in 2010, and as the political head of the party, we charged that hill and tried to win the day, and we lost. We did. We lost that fight. And there were Democrats who would say, well, they paid a price for that at the ballot box that November. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, because I wanted you to pay a price for that. All right. And but that's the politics. And a lot of people tend to look at, the chairman of a party like you're somehow so supposed to be concerned about all these other things. No, we only have two concerns. Two: raise money and win elections. That's it. I talked to members on the Hill, Democrat and Republican, who are quick to point out they get in trouble if they walk across the aisle and have a conversation about infrastructure or health care or some other measures that they're trying to get done. They're trying to get, it's great when you put a bill on the table that it has bipartisan support. That's important. And in fact, analysis, I serve on the bipartisan policy board, and its analysis has shown that a significant number of bills that have bipartisan support have gotten passed out of Congress than any one bill by an individual Republican or individual Democrat. So it proves the point that the country, the Congress, we have to find that space in order to get some big things done, particularly now that we're still dealing with pandemic. We're reeling from a flatlined economy for Main Street. Wall Street's fine, but Main Street still has job issues.
On that note, I guess my last question is, one of the concerns I have as a university president is I'm bringing young people here to try to transform their lives. Part of that transformation is that they get uncomfortable, that they sit and talk with someone they otherwise wouldn't. You and I have sat next to each other on a plane and had great conversation every time we see each other.
You remember that, huh?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We have great conversation every time we see each other. The point being that as you meet people, you learn more about people, you broaden your horizons. You don't have to agree, but at least you have to understand. What is your advice for the young people who would listen to this, who would see you as a black man in a Republican Party that does not always seem to draw them, but at the same time, they want to come to a university that has sent the first black woman to the White House as a vice president in the form of Kamala Harris? What is your advice for those who are like you, coming into a university, thinking about their future, being itched by politics, wanting to make a difference, but also seeing the partisanship that exists?
Well, you put it perfectly as you open the question. Get out of your comfort zone. You got to be uncomfortable. If you're not uncomfortable, then you're not learning. If you're not uncomfortable, then you're not listening. If you're not uncomfortable, then you're not speaking with truth. You're sort of repeating what you've already heard. Because when we stay stuck with those who agree with everything that we think and feel and emote, et cetera, where is that, to put it in terms you appreciate, where's that academic experience? Where's that environment where that thought is challenged? And for me, I've always been in that space. I've had to defend at every turn what I believe, why I believe it, why, I had to go, black folks and explain to them, yeah, I'm still black. Just because I'm a Republican don't mean I'm not black. And then I had to go talk to white folks who saw me as a Republican and wanted me to sound and look like them in terms of how I expressed myself. And what I learned very early on in my life is I got to be who I am, and I got to be comfortable with that. And I've got to define that very early on. So when I walk in the room, I bring black in the room. right? When I walk in because that's what I am first. So that's where the orientation of your lived experience begins. And everything else is layered in that and on that and around that. And that's what you pick and choose. Okay, so now I'm going to do the business thing, but I'll do that way. If you want, okay, let's go back and hang out in the neighborhood. We do that. But all of that has a core experience that you sort of bring to the conversation. At the same time, though, you've got to put yourself in situations where, you're going to be a little uncomfortable. When I was RNC chairman, I would talk to the state chairman around the country, and I said, get out of your comfort zone. All y'all sitting up here talking about, yes, we want blacks in the party. Okay, what are you doing about it? It's not a question of how many black folks do you know. Please don't do that. All right. That's not what this is about. It's like, what steps are you making and taking to actually spend time getting to know what's going on in the black community in the first place? Because you can't just invite somebody up in here and not know where they're coming from, because they're going to bring stuff with them. And a lot of that stuff is not going to align with you. The reverse of that is true as well, right? For the students at Howard, who are, this institution is historic, not just because it's old, right? It's been around a long time. It's because of who's graduated from it, right? It's historic because you have someone right now representing Howard values, Howard principles and ideals, sitting up at the observatory, right, as Vice President of the United States, who's in the president's ear. That's historic, all right? But having spent time with Kamala and knowing her personally and knowing her well, she didn't do it by being comfortable. She's not historic because she was comfortable. She's historic because she has been in spaces where, it probably wasn't the best, but it was important to be there because she was there to make a mark, lay a word or two, and learn and listen. And so if you don't do anything else, learn and listen. You cannot look at me and think you know anything about me if you haven't listened to what I've said. Right. And I think that's the truth we all have to deal with every day. And you and I even talked about that a little bit, is how you have that experience of experiencing someone else.
Well, thanks for being here. And I think that's a great, as they say, that's a great grace note to end on. I'm not going to make you any more uncomfortable about the vacancy that's going to occur in Annapolis anytime soon. But with that in mind, my guest today was Michael Steele, former Lieutenant Governor of Maryland and former Chairman of the Republican National Committee. I thank you for sharing bits of your journey with us. I'm Dr. Wayne Frederick. Please join me next time on The Journey.
This program was produced by WHET and made possible by contributions from viewers like you. For more information on this program or any other program, please visit our website at whet.org. Thank you.